One day, I was reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone when something magical happened. The words on the page started to glow, and suddenly, I wasn't in my room anymore. I was inside Hogwarts. The Great Hall was big, with a ceiling that looked like the night sky. Candles floated, and kids in black robes sat at long tables, talking and laughing. The pictures on the walls moved, and ghosts flew past me. It felt so real. "Who are you?" a voice asked. I turned around. Ron Weasley looked at me in surprise. Hermione Granger stood next to him, fixing her robe. "You must be new," she said. "Come on. Potions class is starting." She pulled my arm, and we ran down the halls to a dark room. Professor Snape stood at the front, looking grumpy. "A new student?" he said in a deep voice. I sat down, ready to make a potion. I carefully added the ingredients, but when I reached for a small green bottle, splash! It slipped from my hand and spilled into my bubbling pot. Boom! A cloud of pink smoke filled the room. Everyone coughed and giggled, but Snape looked mad. He stepped closer. "What have you done?" he said. My heart pounded as the smoke swirled around me. Suddenly, everything spun. The castle disappeared. Poof! I was back in my room, my book still on my lap. Was it all a dream? I looked at my hands. There, on my fingers, was a tiny bit of pink dust. I smiled. Maybe it wasn't a dream after all. Last night, something amazing happened. I fell into a book. I landed inside The Giver, a story about a boy named Jonas who lives in a world where everything is controlled. There is no pain, no choices, and no colors. But when Jonas is picked to be the receiver of memory, he learns the truth about his world. He finds out that it is not as perfect as it seems. I looked around and gasped. Everything was gray. The houses, the sky, and even the people's clothes had no colors at all. The streets were silent, and people walked in straight lines without talking or laughing. The air felt empty, like something was missing. Then, a boy with pale eyes walked up to me. "You're not from here, are you?" he asked. It was Jonas. Jonas took me to a small room full of books. Inside, an old man was waiting. It was the Giver. He took my hands, and suddenly, memories filled my head, colors, music, sunshine, and snow. It was all so beautiful. Jonas looked at me with determination. "People deserve to feel happiness, love, and even sadness," he said. I nodded. He was right. Together, we planned to escape to elsewhere, a place where life was real and full of feelings. But before we could go, everything started to spin. The room blurred, the colors swirled, and suddenly, poof! I blinked and found myself back in my room, my book still open in my lap. I looked around. Was it all a dream? But then, I noticed something strange. On my hands, I could still see a tiny flicker of color, bright and shining, just like the memories Jonas shared. Maybe it wasn't a dream after all. I was reading Jack and the Beanstalk when something magical happened. The words on the page started to glow, and suddenly, I was inside the book. Right in front of me, Jack was climbing a huge beanstalk. He looked about my age, with messy brown hair and bright, curious eyes. "Come on," he said. I grabbed a vine and climbed up with him. The beanstalk was so tall that we climbed higher than the clouds. When we finally reached the top, Jack's eyes sparkled. Let's go inside the castle, he said. Everything inside was huge, the chairs were as big as houses, and the table was longer than a train. As we looked around, Jack spotted a shiny, golden harp and ran to grab it. But suddenly, boom, boom, boom. The ground shook. The giant was coming. His footsteps rumbled like thunder, and his deep voice echoed through the castle. Jack grabbed my hand. We have to run, he whispered. Thump. I gasped and sat up. I was back in my room, my book lying open on my lap. My heart was still racing, and my hands tingled as if I had really been climbing. I looked around, confused. Had it all been a dream? But then, something caught my eye. Lying on my blanket was a single golden harp string, shimmering in the morning sunlight.